Hello and welcome to our series about collaborative procurement in construction projects. In this episode, Ed Burton, a director in buildings and places, an advisory services lead in infrastructure at AECOM, and Tom Douglas, a construction and engineering partner at Eversheds Sutherland, discuss a practical guide to collaborative procurement, which they have co-produced with the intention of having an easily digestive toolkit for those who are looking to explore collaborative procurement.
Well, hi Ed. Welcome back to our series of podcasts on collaborative procurement and contracting. It's been a while since we last caught up. How's it all going?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Tom. Very good to see you. Yeah, all going well. Still busy.
Still
Still
busy.
seeing, yeah, still busy. Still seeing lots of opportunities. I suppose the good news is that globally, everyone's still investing in infrastructure, either through growing economies needing new infrastructure or established economies needing to renovate aging assets. So it's a good time to be in the construction and infrastructure space.
Absolutely. And I think this time round, having spoken in our last series of podcasts around what the models look like for collaborative contracting and procurement, what we thought we'd do this time round was have a little look at what we're seeing internationally. I know we've been having a number of conversations with clients and colleagues across our offices around what they're looking to do in markets outside of the UK. We thought what we might find interesting is a bit of discussion around what we're seeing, what people are looking to try and do in their markets, what sort of trends are coming up, and basically look at it from a bit of an international perspective. And what we're going to do across the next sort of series of podcasts is speak to some of our colleagues to discuss what they're seeing from their clients in their markets, what challenges they're facing, what sort of upskilling they may need, and what support we can give, particularly with, I think, the sort of more developed market we have in the UK infrastructure field around these models that we can share with them. So it's really good that we can speak to a number of people across the globe around their experience. So just thinking about that to start with, I mean, what have you been seeing, Ed, sort of looking at it from an international perspective?
We should probably start with our jolly to Dublin last year. Tom, I think it's a
Absolutely.
good place to start where we did a seminar on collaborative procurement and we went through the guide that we published. So what we're seeing in the Irish market, Tom, is significant investment in infrastructure. Their economy is really strong, recovered really well from COVID. A lot of foreign direct investment, and so there's uh, big investment in infrastructure programs, particularly in transportation, particularly in the Dublin area, but more broadly across the country. We're seeing investment in water and social infrastructure as well. So a, a, a real step change for the Irish market that hasn't had huge investment over the past few years, past 20 years. Um, and what we're seeing is that the scale and complexity of the projects and programs to be delivered means that clients are now starting to look for a different model. So I think one of the things that we've always said about collaborative procurement is the driver is the scale and complexity of projects. It's a need to work in a more collaborative, less adversarial, less transactional way. And so we're really seeing that in Ireland. So I suppose how it's manifesting itself at the moment is a look to move towards NEC contract. So
Mhm.
um, historically, Ireland has only delivered under their government's construction contracts, which are quite sort of heavy on risk transfer to the supply chain. And as more international suppliers, international contractors are moving into the markets because of the need to deliver at the scale of the projects, there's a push, and obviously the consultant markets is driving this because they recognise the benefits of a more proactive, more collaborative form of contract. So we're seeing that, but we're also seeing more discussions around design and build versus a more traditional delivery model, and so I think the next iteration is then as how do we move to more collaborative models that move further up our scale of collaboration.
Absolutely. I know we talked about NEC when we were in Dublin, didn't we? It was one of the areas we covered at our presentation, our talk, and it was really interesting to hear people's experience with NEC. There were some people who had some familiarity with it, but it was still, yeah, pretty young in terms of that market. What I think we found the contractors, the consultants are used to seeing NEC models when they're working in different jurisdictions, so they are much more familiar with it than the client organisations looking to try and develop some of these projects to get them off the ground. So upskilling them on what those NEC models look like and some of the collaborative procurement methods that we see in the UK market is a real benefit to them.
So just on touring Europe then, Tom, you should tell us about your trip to Germany recently.
Yes, I was in Germany. One of my colleagues has been working out there with some people on looking at again NEC models and two-stage contracting in particular around some projects, and we're actually going to be talking to him in one of our podcasts. So I won't give too much away, don't want to spoil it for our listeners today. But yeah, it was really interesting to hear about the market over in Germany, which hasn't really been looking at that sort of procurement method at all in the past. Again, similar to what you've just been saying, it's a really traditional approach to contracting out there at the moment. So it would be a pretty sort of revolutionary step to move into these sort of new models. Obviously, some challenges where we're talking about public sector procurement. We've got the procurement regulations in place across Europe, so there are some things that need to be considered, some challenges. But yeah, it's a really interesting discussion topic, and it's really nice to see that, considering different ways of working and how important it is that they're thinking about bringing these large infrastructure projects in particular through in a way which is different from the old way of doing things, because they can see that there are some benefits to it. They can see that there's going to be some real improvements in both delivery, hopefully cost, and in innovation too, particularly on the technology side. So yeah, it's really interesting to see that in these markets, people are starting to look at the models that we've been using for quite some time in the UK, and are able to give them the benefit of our expertise, which is always a nice thing to do. And a trip to Germany and some more good beer out there too, which
couple of steins, no doubt. Yeah, that sounds great. I think the driver or the catalyst, as well as scale and complexity of project, is also client leadership. The sort of appetite to do something different, to try and get different outcomes from the more traditional delivery models. We're seeing that in Sweden. So we are doing some work with Trafikverket, who are the government's transportation agency, who are really looking to move to almost alliance type arrangements to deliver some of their complex transformation schemes. So both across rail and highways, and it'd be really interesting to see how that lands over the market. And I think we'll do a podcast on the Nordics market as well, and try and get some insight from what's going on there. The other jurisdiction that we're seeing a transition to a bit more of a collaborative approach is in the US, which I think might be surprising to some of our listeners, given that is a pretty well established, pretty traditional market. But we're really seeing the emergence of what they're calling progressive design and build, which I think in UK terminology would be called two-stage design and build. So this principle where you get a contractor on board early, they bring their design team with them, they work closely with the clients to really scope out and define almost the performance specification of what they want the asset to achieve, and then they work through the design phase on sort of an open book contract or time materials contract, and then once the scope is sort of finalized or defined, and the design is developed to a level of detail where a lot of project risk has been mitigated and there's much more certainty, then they move to a fixed price or a guaranteed maximum price contract. And again, transportation, we're seeing that on a number of big schemes, and there's a lot of positive noise around that model, which is great. And I think that's just a reflection of people understanding and really seeing the benefits of early collaboration.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, again, a similar story with us really on that. And I was also surprised one of my colleagues was reaching out to me in the Middle East, not a market I had associated with sort of collaborative models from the discussions I've certainly had in recent years. But it does look like there is certainly more of a move to think about whether they can be more collaborative in the way that they're working together on the mega projects and some of the larger infrastructure schemes, which of course are going out there in huge numbers and huge value. So really interesting to hear that that's something that they want to explore a bit more. So again, we may be looking at another trip out to the Middle East to talk about NEC contracting again. But interestingly, I know FIDIC is introducing a collaborative model of contracts in the near future. So yeah, I know a number of the contract publishing bodies are thinking about collaborative models more carefully than they perhaps have done in the past. It's really good to see that there's a lot of options out there for people who may not be quite so used to NEC or some of the other contract models that we've seen, that there are options that they can explore. So that was really good to see. Similarly, we had a discussion with some colleagues over in Asia about some of the projects they're working on. Obviously, we know NEC is used in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in other jurisdictions. So perhaps more familiarity with some of the contracting models out there, often amended fairly heavily, I think it's fair to say. But it's good to see that that's being used. So again, more to discuss in that market too, which is good to see.
It does it does surprise me, based on what I know about the Middle East market, that they're moving or talking about collaborative models, but great to see him. Yeah, well, what I think, Tom, is that actually the FIDIC collaborative contract form, I think, could be another catalyst for clients and project teams to start thinking about different delivery models. Clearly, I think if you go and speak to a Middle East client about NEC contracts, you'll probably get a few blank looks, but with FIDIC being sort of the predominant form out there, I think that that might help the drive to move to more collaborative things.
A bit more traction on that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Talk to us a little bit, Tom, about the sort of the advice and support that Eversheds Sutherland can provide to clients in this space.
Yeah, I mean, what we've been doing quite successfully is obviously in the UK market. I think we are much further along the journey than some of the jurisdictions we've been talking about around the collaborative models and the contracting models along the scale that our guide talks about, and we've been able to explore the full range of options, as you said, from two-stage contracting, progressive design and build frameworks at the very bottom of the sort of scale, right up to the alliance models, enterprises at the top end of the scale. And I think having had the experience that we've got in the UK, what works, what doesn't work, and what the models are, what are the pitfalls, what we can do is work with our colleagues internationally and our clients internationally to give them the benefit of that experience and help them develop models that will work for them. As you say, if they're not familiar with some of the contracts that we've been using in the UK English market, then there are opportunities to just explore what we can do with the contracts they are working on. Obviously, there are jurisdiction specific challenges, of course, with everything, and we'll discuss some of those in our podcast with some of my colleagues as we go through the series. But it's interesting to see how actually our experience in the UK is really beneficial and valuable to them, because we can help them to understand with the clients what challenges they will face, how we can overcome them, what models might work for them, and what are the best ways to implement. And I know I think we talked about this and you wanted to touch on it again, that learning around the behaviors, particularly on these sort of models.
Obviously, exporting UK knowledge is good for your air miles, Tom. So that's important. But I think you're right. I think it's not just exporting knowledge; it's lessons learned to making sure that other countries that are looking to move to more collaborative models aren't going through the teething problems that some of UK projects may have had. But yeah, we're also focusing on the behaviour side, as you said, because I think there's definitely a hearts and minds part to this. So what we're finding is that you can't expect project teams to go from working in a more traditional transactional way one day and then the next day just move into a more collaborative manner, just because of the contract and the procurement vehicle has been changed. And so we're really working on how do you help people with the soft skills, with the communication, and just really understanding what it looks and feels like to operate in a collaborative environment. So we often We often talk about NEC and target cost contracts and the potential loss of commercial tension, but actually that's in my view that's completely incorrect. Collaboration doesn't mean loss of commercial tension. It just means that you challenge in a slightly different way. But and I think sometimes the term collaboration can be a little bit unhelpful because it's a broad skill set, it's a broad set of behaviours that come together to ultimately deliver the best outcome for the project. So yeah, we've been definitely focusing on that in the change and transformation space.
Very good. And obviously, there are some headwinds around collaboration internationally at the moment, so it's interesting to see what will develop in the coming years around this space and working together internationally. But I think it's still a really important thing to focus on, and the behaviors, obviously, if we're going to look at these models, are crucial to getting it working right. And we talked about that in our previous series of podcasts. If you haven't had a chance to listen to those, I would encourage you to go back and have a listen, where we speak to some clients about what they found works and how to make the really far end of the scale of collaboration most successful with the behaviors and the way that you're leading from the front as a client organization, particularly around what you want to achieve and getting the best outcomes from these models. So just to wrap up, what we're going to do is speak to a number of our colleagues across our international offices about what they're seeing in their jurisdictions, what sort of challenges they're facing, what opportunities there are, and how we can help to bring these models to life for people internationally. Also looking at a number of ways that they are finding their markets may influence what we can do. I know that we've been speaking to a number of our colleagues, particularly in the Nordics, as you mentioned earlier, around some of the models they're using, and that they have got quite a lot of experience out there in collaborative contracting. So it'd be interesting to see what they can bring and what messages they can share with us that may be really beneficial for what we're working on. So we're just looking forward to you joining us for the next series of podcasts, and just like to say thank you very much again, Ed, for joining me, and look forward to speaking with you again on upcoming series of podcasts.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you would like a copy of our practical guide to collaborative procurement in construction projects, please use the link in the show notes to download it. For more information, please reach out to Tom Douglas or Ed Burton.